What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shaped their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is the CEO of LegalShield, Jeff Bell. LegalShield is the leading provider of legal and privacy management services in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom, with nearly 800 employees and 1.8 million members. Previously, Jeff was the corporate vice president of Microsoft Global Marketing and oversaw efforts to grow Xbox. He launched Halo 3, Guitar Hero, Rock Band, and grew Xbox Live from 4 to 12 million subscribers. Jeff also served as vice president and general manager of the Chrysler and Jeep divisions. You might remember the legendary Dodge commercial, "That thing got a Hemi?" Well, that was the innovation of today's guest.
Don't let the poison of losing seep into your life. Pressure is something that you learn to deal with in sports because you don't always win. You find out what you're made of because of the pressure that's on you to do your best. And when you fail, that's the real test of character. Pressure is just a form of energy. If you allow pressure to become anxiety and tension, then you've allowed it to become that poison.
Jeff, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Don. Appreciate you.
Well, I love the organization. I love LegalShield. I have worked with you and enjoyed our opportunity in the past. But to get ready for today and the idea of digging in with you on sports and your history, it's been just a powerful experience. I know you started playing football competitively at 8 years old. That's what happens when you grow up in Oklahoma. Played until your senior year of college. Now, what is it that you love about the game of football?
Winning. No, I'm kidding.
Well, everybody loves winning. That's awesome.
Everybody loves that. I would say that it's contributing to that team victory. You also bond in a loss. And then with football specifically, I'll also tell you the contact. They're related. You're physically doing something that when you do it correctly, contributes to your team's success, enabling them to have a great play, to score. And football in particular, the assignments are very clear, and you either succeed or you do not succeed in making that contribution. And I've always loved that.
You know, as a football guy myself, one of the things that I've always loved about the game is that it really does take 11 independent souls doing a singular thing together. You could have 10 being perfect and one completely off the reservation, and much is lost.
The other team tends to find the one, if you know what I mean. One of my mentors talked about jazz symphony and whatnot, being able to improvise, but then also being able to stay cohesive. It's no different in football or in sports. To your point, everybody's got to do their best, and that's where the magic occurs.
Yeah. You know, I know much of your success on the football field you credit to an Oklahoma upbringing and an Ohio development. Explain what you learned from those two independent windows of time in your life and growing up in those areas.
I have to start with the fact that my father was an Oklahoma graduate in journalism, and that during his tenure, he broadcast the football games. And this is Bud Wilkerson's incredible run of success.
Oh, yeah.
So growing up, of course, we continued to watch every nationally televised game of the Sooners against Nebraska and Texas annually. And it was also a wonderful time in the 70s and the 80s growing up with All-Americans and All-Pros, the Greg Pruitts, the Selman brothers, Joe Washington, Billy Sims, Tony Casillas, and the list goes on. And it was just a family tradition centered around a lot of football at OU. With Ohio, look, I love Oklahoma, but Ohio was going to make a claim against Texas or Western Pennsylvania or even California. of Florida as the heart of football in America. It's 24/7, 365. My high school football team was the Centerville Elks, and I started We Elks, as you point out, in the third grade. So a lot of early grooming. And same thing with the Buckeyes. Woody Hayes, growing up, was always on the television, always in the sports. And even with football, I fell in love with the Cincinnati Bengals during the Kenny Anderson, Isaac Hayes years, and later Boomer Esiason, Chris Collinsworth, where they went to 2 Super Bowls. They didn't win, but it was great to be a fan at that time.
You mentioned Centerville. Had a great coach there, Bob Gregg, been honored and recognized a number of different times, but most of it for leadership, just his willingness to invest not just in X's and O's, but in growing the young players. What did you learn from Coach Gregg that you still think about today?
Well, I'd have to say motivation and inspiration. We had a very serious program. It was a year-round program. And again, that started in middle school as you started to get ready for high school. There were always optional, I put in quotations, for weight training in the off season, running drills in the off season, et cetera. But Bob Gregg, at least during my time, told the same story to every incoming class to the program and reiterated that story. So being a great storyteller is part of being a leader and holding true to that narrative. He came from Trotwood Madison before Centerville, which was a Dayton city school, tougher side of the tracks. Centerville was growing in its affluence and in its size. And he basically said that everyone in the state of Ohio considered us to be soft. He may have even used the term pansy. And again, I don't know what's allowed or not allowed anymore. And that he said that everyone expected us to quit because we were rich kids with cushy lives. And that's why he said we've got to work harder than anyone else, and that we've got to be able to do whatever it takes to prove them wrong, that we were stronger and that we didn't need their disrespect. Believe it or not, by the time I graduated, we always played with a chip on our shoulder, always. And we always worked harder in preparation for the season and for the games.
There's so much power in what he did there. From a leadership perspective, too often we can get successful and soft, and it becomes hard to convince people it's us against the world, but it's an important narrative.
It certainly is a great place to start. I would argue that over time, Coach Gregg then developed a culture where it started to pass down from the coaches, the captains, the seniors, to the leaders at every different position to be able to take on that same mantle that you do your best and you forget the rest. You talk about Saban or a Belichick, and you hear these things like, do your job. In some ways, people that don't really get the culture, they would be like, oh, that just seems so draconian and heavy handed. No, no, no. It becomes part of who you are. You would rather die than let your teammate down.
Oh, yeah.
I played with the same group of men in high school that I had known since the third grade. We were all on the We Elks together, and we all went through the system together. This is a band of brothers. Everybody worked as hard as they could. And then if something didn't go right, because they never do, you never get every play right. You lift them up and you just say, let's go. It's another play. One play doth not a victory or loss make. You're up the next play. This is what I love about football. It is the continuous part of always being able to contribute and get better.
Clearly, as you said, coach developed that culture. He did a really good job. And you're right. There is that progression, that place where you all start winning and winning consistently. In fact, you became the first team to capture 4 straight Western Ohio League championships. Pretty amazing. Do you have a favorite memory from that period?
I would say that from a memory perspective, the bad and the good, because they both matter. We were ready my senior year to fight for a place in the playoffs. And at that time, there was less enfranchisement. They only took 2 teams from each of the 4 regions. So it started at the quarterfinals. It's now been expanded, and Centerville's participated to a much greater degree. Our first game was against the defending state champion Cincinnati Princeton football team, and we lost that game.
Mm.
We lost 21-14. It was heartbreaking. By the way, one blown assignment. We didn't run a lot of stunts on defense where I played. A linebacker failed to hit the gap on an X cross, and one touchdown went 80 yards. We were behind the rest of the game trying to catch up. The other thing that I would say is we won 9 in a row. And we still always believed that we were a team that could compete at the highest level in the state. We did not get invited to the state playoffs. We were ranked third behind Cincinnati Princeton and Cincinnati Elder. We had to go up against, Cincinnati, a much bigger city. But we always believed it. The one thing I'll also tell you that was unique about football in high school as part of Bob Gregg, it was smash mouth. We ran the veer. And for those that don't know what that is, it's a triple option. The quarterback takes the ball, he either hands off to someone diving off tackle, or he keeps it and then he attacks the defensive end. If that person bites, he pitches. And if the person doesn't bite or goes after the pitch man, he cuts up field and runs. We ran that left and right 98% of the time. We might have passed 3 times in a game, maybe 4. We used to run drills in practice that if everybody didn't touch the running back, the entire starting defense had to run a lap around the field. So trust me, it didn't take long before everybody got and touched that running back or that wide receiver. As a defensive lineman, I used to hate is, I hope they don't complete a bomb. Then I've got to run down the field and touch the guy, even in the end zone, by the way. That was the rule. So those are the kinds of things that we did just for extreme ownership for ourselves and for our teammates.
But you know what I love about the beginning part of that conversation there is that what you ran were pretty basic concepts, but you just ran them so well that it didn't matter if you knew that it was coming, you couldn't stop it.
Yeah.
Especially in the world of business, right? Where so many of us are looking for some crazy idea that we could concoct or manage. Find your base.
Yep.
And just secure it.
I'll tell you what, Don, what that I'd like to talk about this now as a CEO, having grown up with football, is the most difficult thing is to make things simple. The greatest energy effort is in making the difficult simple. Because once you have a simple process, it's replicable. If everybody understands it, if it's easy to do, that's when you scale. Making the difficult simple is one of the lessons that I learned from high school football.
Super powerful. You graduated from Centerville and you continued on to Division III, Kenyon College. Now, what led you to want to go D3?
Honestly, I have love in my heart for Coach Gregg, but he was also an intimidating figure. And whenever you were called into his office, most of the time you were afraid. So I was never called. And I'm not trying to say I was a goody two shoes, but I mean, you purposefully tried not to ever be called into his office. Okay. And I got called into his office. This was my first time. I was a senior and he's like, Bell, yes, sir. And he said, the head coach at Kenyon College said that he wants me to send him the smartest player on the team to play there. And I guess that's you. That was literally the conversation. And he handed me a letter from Tom McHugh, basically said, we really would like to recruit people from your program. We have a high standard for academics. And it wasn't addressed to me. It was like, addressed to him. I visited, I got to see the facilities. Beta Theta Pi was a fraternity that had most of the football players. They had me stay with them overnight for my visit. I ended up really liking the guys and fell in love with it. Look, I'm an Oklahoma boy. I was growing up in Southern Ohio. When I went to this campus, it might as well have been Oxford or Harvard because it rough-hewn medieval buildings, just so historic and had such grandeur. I was in awe. So I was pretty signed, sealed, and delivered after that one visit.
Did you contemplate trying something maybe at a bigger school? Did you have any sense of that? Or was this offer just it for you?
When I was going through my junior and then my senior year in high school, I'm 5'10.5" and I played at about 205. As one coach said, this next fellow who we want to celebrate at the banquet at the end of the year, he is hostile, mobile, and agile. And that's probably a good way of describing why did I have any success. I always hit the weight room, but I was super fit. And even in college, I played as well in the fourth quarter as I did in the first. I never tired because I was able to run a 5-minute, 20-second mile as a defensive lineman. I was in shape. But I was not big. So I didn't get a lot of looks from larger schools. There were a couple that I was looking at, but I wanted to play. I knew that.
Right.
When I saw the program, which Tom McHugh was trying to turn around, as an example, recruiting the smartest kid on the best programs in Ohio, whether it was St. Ignatius or St. Ed's up in Cleveland or Dublin, Westerville. He was going after the great programs and getting the smartest kids. Why? Because Kenyon had a high academic standard. that turned me on. And I knew I could play there. I knew I could contribute and be part of an improved program.
Coach McHugh gave you some advice that still sticks with you today. Can you share that with us?
Coach McHugh played for Notre Dame at the very height of its success.
Right.
He was a star fullback and true leader as well. He shared a vulnerability. They were winning and winning and winning. And in a huge game, a go ahead touchdown opportunity against undefeated Georgia Tech, he fumbled
Mm,
on the goal line and they lost the ball.
mm.
He talked about that because he said, in those moments, you have to decide, are you going to let those things destroy you and bring you down, or are you going to use them to motivate you? Don't let the poison of losing seep into your life.
Wow.
My father also had said, son, there's only two things you can control in life: your attitude and your effort. Your attitude always needs to be positive, and your effort needs to be exemplary. It just felt like my own dad talking to me again when I got those words from Coach McHugh. And I'm proud to say, while our freshman year we lost 6 games, we were 3-6. We had 3 consecutive winning seasons after that, culminating with an NCAC championship in 1984.
Don't let the poison of losing seep into your life. Boy, that's powerful. Because again, as you said, he had that experience, right? That destroy you moment on a big national stage. I mean, in Notre Dame, a fumble like that could cost you an awful lot. That's really powerful lesson. And what a neat way to be able to realize that losing may happen, but it doesn't have to seep into your life.
Beautiful, beautiful words.
Yeah. So we mentioned a couple of coaches here, great ones. But if you had to pick the greatest influence on your sports journey, who would it be? And is there a lesson maybe that that person shared that we haven't touched already?
My father was driving me. I played baseball, I wrestled, I played football growing up, and he always supported me. Probably the greatest thing that I learned from him is that he just wanted to talk about how I felt when we were winning, when we lost, when I was insecure about how well I was doing, or caution if I was feeling too confident in how I was doing. He just wanted to talk about how I was feeling in the moment, and then always tried to share words of wisdom and encouragement for my own growth. That to me was important. I didn't make the travel team as a sophomore. Centerville was a huge program, had 160 players on the team. If you weren't on a special team, you didn't get to go to away games as a sophomore. And I felt devastated. And my father simply gave me more perspective on all you can control is, again, your effort. And don't let this make you discouraged. Work harder to be able to step it up. And equally, the next year when I was a junior and I was on the punt return team and I blocked a punt that turned into a touchdown, my father was there not to just celebrate, but to say the true lesson: stay in it. The resilience, the persistence, the constitution, that's the real lesson in life. He always would get to the greater good from the sports experience.
The real lesson was to stay in it. I love it. Did you ever get a chance to say thank you to your father about the way that these lessons played into the way you managed and thought through life?
Yes and no. Unfortunately, my father died in a plane crash during my senior year at Kenyon. That was a terrible tragedy. But I will say to you that as an adult now, he died at 45. I'm 59 years old. We didn't have a lot of that time to talk about it as adults. But I'll tell you that it meant a lot to me. My parents came to every single football game that I played,
Mm.
no matter where it was held. And the last time that I saw my father was after a preseason game my senior year. We had dinner together in town with my mother. And as they were going to go to the car to drive back to Centerville, I was able to hug my father and to kiss my father and to tell him that I loved him. Quite frankly, with that tragedy, it helped to make the loss bearable.
Wow. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. That's enormously powerful and great lesson there. Tomorrow's promised to no one.
Mhm.
We have to be grateful and hug and kiss as often as we can.
Amen.
I look at Legal Shield, 800 employees, 1.8 million active members. There has to be pressure from sunrise to sunset. What did your time playing sports in general, but football in particular, teach you about performing under pressure?
Well, a great game is a roller coaster. Look at the Super Bowl between the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots. That game could not have gone worse, and most teams would have quit, but the Patriots just kept grinding. Pressure is present always. Every day, my days are like roller coasters. I have moments of elation and joy, celebration, and then there are other times that it is a down and there's bad news, there's a crisis that needs to be dealt with, and you've got to stay even. You've got to stay completely focused upon the core values. At Legal Shield, we're mission first. That's our value. We are trying to protect and empower people with legal and privacy services. It's bigger than all of us individually. It keeps us grounded. We want to constantly improve. We want to join forces. That means that we're better together than being alone. We all have extreme ownership over what we do, and we live passionately. I relate all of those as lessons, quite frankly, that I got from football and from sports. You're playing for your teammates. You're always trying to get better. You recognize it's a team sport, not an individual sport. You do what you have to do and do it well, and you do it passionately. I would say that pressure is something that you learn to deal with in sports because you don't always win. You find out what you're made of because of the pressure that's on you to do your best. And when you fail, that's the real test of character. When you get knocked down, do you get back up? And do you get back up with the attitude that you're not going to get knocked down again and that you're going to learn from that experience? That's what really matters, I think, to be able to deal with pressure. I also tell you that pressure is just a form of energy. If you allow pressure to become anxiety and tension, then you've allowed it to become that poison that Tom McHugh talked about. You let it to become a negative energy in your life. But it's just energy. So if you take it and you say that pressure, I'm going to turn into a positive energy, it will drive you forwards to do your level best and to execute as you're able to execute.
Wow. I've had coaches tell me pressure is a privilege, but I like it. Pressure is a great form of energy. The premise of the podcast is this idea that a disproportionate number of Fortune 500 executives were actively engaged in sports at the high school and collegiate level, and that they would credit that experience in helping shape the way they lead today. Do you agree that having been an athlete has helped make you a better leader?
There's no question it's wonderful to win, but the real lessons that I learned is if at first you don't succeed, try again. There's a great book that I love, Grit, that says, hey, it's about your effort. And I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
That freshman year at Kenyon, I'm playing outside linebacker, and we were playing against Baldwin Wallace, which was a very good program and competing at the Division III championship level. And they had a kid transfer. I guess he got in trouble at the University of Florida, but he was their starting fullback, and he transferred back home and played at Baldwin Wallace. He was like 6'3", 235 pounds. Maybe fully clothed on a rainy day, I might have weighed 215. Okay. And he came at me, and I got down into the best position to tackle him. And we hit like two bulls, boom. And boy, next thing I knew, I was looking at the sky. I was sitting on my keister, and he just kind of rumbled over me. And the only thing that was funny about this is one of my best friends, Tommy Daisy, out of Houston, Texas, he did exactly the same thing, comes rushing in, breaks down, boom, the two of them collide, and he goes right over onto his keister, and he gets run over, and he goes into the end zone for a touchdown. Now, I laugh about it now, but of course, it was tremendously humiliating, especially on film review the next day when you're going back and forth, back and forth. It's like, here's Tweedledum and Tweedledumber, and they're going back and forth. Everybody's laughing at you and whatnot. Hey, Tommy and I got together, and we said, that's not happening again. And we simply tightened it up because they were clearly going to be running. They had a guy that was playing D1 ball with D3 players. And Tommy and I combined for 12 tackles in the rest of that game. That was a half each. We were in the game. We just tightened it up. And, I was going low and he was going high, or he was going low and I was going high. We just found a way to compete and win. Now, what does that mean in business? Hey, it's competitive. Sometimes you make mistakes, and other times people just play better than you. But here's what you can't do: quit. There is no quit.
Can't lay on your back and look at the sky.
Exactly. But that's just the attitude you got to have in business too, is you got to be in it to win it.
Yeah, I love it. Before becoming CEO at LegalShield, you worked at a number of different leadership positions at Ford and NBC Universal. Is there a person that served as a role model for you, like a coach did in athletics, in this professional piece of your life and your journey?
Yes, I mean, I spent 12 years at Ford Motor Company, and in the latter half of that time, they hired a man by the name of Jim Schreier, who had been in consulting. He had been at RJR Nabisco. He was a brand maven, and he became a mentor to me. And in fact, when he left Ford, I followed him to Daimler Chrysler at his request. And Jim was important because he was the first person that really helped me understand the concept of a North Star, setting a vision. He used to talk about, we're going to take that hill. Does everybody see that hill? Okay, everybody got it? And by the way, if someone's like, no, I can't see the hill. Well, look, here, hold on a second. Let's change your perspective. Let me help you change your view until everybody said, I know where that hill is. Then he would ask, okay, does everybody know how to get there? Some of you are going to be going on the left flank. Some are going to be going on the right flank, some up the middle. We're not all going to be going at the same pace, but we are going to arrive at that hill in a coordinated fashion. Does everybody know what they need to do? Some people would be like, yep, I got it. And other people like, I'm not so certain. That's where he would then step in as a leader and spend time. He taught me that leaders need to be a utility infielder, able to give coaching and counseling to different areas of the business in order for people to be confident and self-assured that they could contribute in a meaningful way. And if you think about it, sports, same thing. It's not the same skill to defend a block as it is to block. There are unique skills that need to be taught, and not everybody's equally confident and capable at the same time. Coaches need to spend and marshal their time accordingly to rise everybody up. And Jim was great at that.
Yeah.
Belief leads to activity, leads to results. And he used to talk about raising the bar, BAR. He was an inspiration, no question about it.
He's doing this great job of making sure that everybody's headed in the same direction, that you know what hill you're going to take. He then steps in and coach. One of the things that stands out to me about that is that he's teaching leadership while he's giving it, right?
Yes.
Because I look at your pattern, and again, all that time in the automotive industry, and then suddenly here you are, you're leading LegalShield, a very different model, a very different business. But I'm going to assume that the reason why you were so comfortable making the move was because though the business might be different, leadership is leadership.
Yes. And I will tell you that people ask me all the time when I went from automotive to Microsoft to run the Xbox business, people were like, God, that must have been a crazy change. No, Microsoft is sales and engineering. And guess what automotive is? Sales and engineering.
Right.
It was really pretty much the same culture, just in a different context. And even at Legal Shield, what we do is deliver a service that matters to people in their lives, and engineering matters. My son worked at Enterprise, and Enterprise very purposefully tries to recruit student athletes right out of college, and they have a great training program, and he participated in it and he benefited tremendously. And the one thing that I learned both at Daimler Chrysler and Ford, but also at Microsoft, is that there's another kind of athlete, especially when you work with engineers. At Xbox, if you include esports, okay, where people are playing video games, then I was still recruiting athletes, because the passion that engineers have, especially for video games, and it's engineers of all walks of life, whether it's automotive or video game developers, they just sort of love gaming. They have achievement personalities. They want to see progress for their effort. And if at first they don't succeed, they love the fact that they get regenerated in life and they can try again. But it's the same thing that you see working with engineers as you do with those that might be traditional student athletes, as in the enterprise model.
Wow, I love it. And I'm making all these notes. I've got pages already. Belief, activity, results. I like it.
Raise the bar.
Raise the bar. That's really powerful. Belief leads to activity, activity leads to results. So you've played on a lot of great teams. You've participated in a few at Microsoft, at Ford, now at LegalShield. And many people refer to their corporate organizations as teams.
Mhm.
I believe in sports metaphors, but to me, I think that's a place where too many people go overboard. And the truth is that many of the times, the people that are on these teams, quote unquote, are actually just groups of individuals drawing the same paycheck. When you're thinking about building teams, what are the elements that take that group of collective individuals and forms them, bonds them, creates those four letters team?
You have to have a common mission. For it to be a team, there has to be something motivating you beyond just how much you're getting paid or what's in it for you. I'm not saying that it's complete self-sacrifice. We're unique individuals, but you've got to establish something greater than the individual for a team to be formed. When you're in a sports team, you're doing what you're doing with the desire for the team to succeed. People talk about this all the time. Is it better to be a superstar on a losing team or to be a contributor on a winning team? I always choose the latter.
Ditto.
You see it even in professional sports that sometimes it's so much about one person, they don't win. They certainly don't win championships. And why? Because it's about the one person. There isn't a team there.
Hmm.
Getting that greater mission matters. At Legal Shield, we are looking to try and make society better by giving equal access to justice for everyone and to protect everyone's security and privacy. That motivates all of us. Whether you are writing software code, selling memberships, helping develop leaderships in our human resources area, whether you are talking on the phone to support our members, everybody has the same mission. That's then followed by values. You've got to not only say the values, but you've got to live the values. And you've got to live the values when nobody else is looking, not just when they're paying attention. When you have the clear direction, where you have the clear commitment, then it's really just about alignment and making sure that everybody understands what it is that we need to do, the right things in the right order, and to be able to measure and get feedback and constantly improve in the progress that we try and make every day, every week, every month, and every year.
So, for those who are trying to build that great team, what advice would you give them? You've laid out those ideas, right? Common mission. Where would you tell people to start?
Well, the one thing is that you've got to lay out a vision that is inspired by your mission. And again, sometimes people say, well, my business is in making shoes. Okay. How inspirational is that? Well, I don't know. Ask Tom's. They said for every shoe we sell, we give one to somebody in a developing nation. You can find something inspirational in what you do. There's a mission for every company. You got to give the missions inspiring the objectives, but you've got to be able to tell them, hey, we're going to double the size of this business in the next 3 years. We're going to grow 10 times bigger than we are right now in the next 5 years. Whatever that is, they've got to say, we've set a stake to do more of our mission as we go forwards, to protect and empower more people every year. And there are proof points that align the individual then to the team. And it has to do with profit sharing. I'm a big believer. I have an hourly employees. They every quarter get a profit sharing to say, I'm contributing to and benefiting from the progress that we measure for the company.
Wow.
Equally, equity ownership matters. We have a 401k that we have 65% participation. It should be 99.9% participation as far as I'm concerned. It's a fantastic program for being able to give people more personal financial security. The last is to be truly equity holders. We have a very broad franchise where all of our vice presidents are in fact owners in the company, and that just helps them understand what is short term, but then what the real price is the long term. A season is long. If you're undefeated for the first half of the season, like the Pittsburgh Steelers, but then you kind of get weaker and weaker as the second half goes on and you don't do well in the playoffs, it's not a great season.
Was that a cheap Ohio reference right there?
I'm sorry, a little bit of a dig there, a little bit of a dig. But that's a great franchise.
But you're right. Seasons are long, and too many people are winning a short period, but they're not figuring out how to win the long one. I know you have 3 sons, and just wondering, what lessons and stories have you shared with your children as they began their leadership journey?
I just want them all to be happy and independent. They've got to find their own path, their own style. And then I always encourage them to welcome feedback as a gift because I truly believe that to be true. The more honest, the better. When you get feedback on you need to change something or improve something or stop something, that's a gift. Second is the more successful you become in life, the more arrogant you will be. It's just natural unless you follow the approach of the great coach Nick Saban or Andy Grove, the founder of Intel. You got to be a little paranoid, and that paranoid needs to lead you to work harder to be able to outwork all of your competitors. Work harder, work smarter, and eat some humble pie voluntarily, not just from your defeats and your mistakes. Maintain the humility to know that sometimes you're good, sometimes you're lucky. Just always assume you're both when things go well.
I love it. So I'm a father of a 12-year-old and 11-year-old. At what age do they actually take that advice?
You got to start early. From when they could understand words, we talked about our priorities as God, family, and friends. And our principles were love, respect, and discipline. We just were very consistently always talking about those themes. You've got to love yourself to love others. You've got to respect yourself and respect others. And you've got to be able to tell the difference between right and wrong and have the discipline to choose the right and just. It's turned out pretty well for us. We're very proud of all three of our sons.
Pay attention to the three of them. Pretty impressive. Now, not only are you CEO of Legal Shield, but you also have your own podcast, 5 Minutes Strong. What kind of topics do you discuss there?
We really stay focused upon positive ideas and suggestions to make people happier and more successful. Even though the vast majority of the audience are related to the Legal Shield business, the themes are about making yourself the best that you can be, to be happy, to be successful. And it is very much looking at assessing where are you and where do you want to be, and then just speaking honestly about why it's so hard to get from A to B. And then try and find some little things that can be done to make a change in your life, some words of wisdom. I want to be very clear. I haven't had a unique idea in my entire life. Everything that I do is simply trying to share what I've learned from others, continuing to wrestle with the same issues and try and come up with new stories and new approaches, because sometimes it clicks for some people and not others. Maybe the next time a light bulb will pop on and it will be helpful for someone. The other thing that we're going to be starting soon is a vidcast, a video and podcast series called Justice for All, that will really be looking at interviewing people that are championing the rights of those that feel disenfranchised or are struggling with discrimination or with inequality, because that is foundational to our mission at Legal Shield and ID Shield. And we look forward to getting that started and hopefully adding some value to everyone.
Wow. I love it when a CEO of a large organization says, I've never had an original idea or never, the humility it takes in that, but the honesty in that is powerful.
Yeah.
I've spent 30 years in journalism asking many coaches, athletes, other leaders if they could identify one habit that they built into their daily routines, their disciplines that they believe allowed them to separate themselves from other people, competitors, even teammates. I kept that list for many, many years. I use it, as you know, we're working with your team around some things that I learned from that list. But is there a habit that you think made a difference for you, something you did regularly?
It's hard to say just one, but if I had to at least begin with force ranking them, I would say that regular exercise, for various reasons. First, the polite way to describe me when I was, even before my teenage years, I was husky. Some might have said maybe even a little pudgy. So I always was insecure about that. And then as I started to grow up and grow out into my natural form and playing football, I also was sensitive to the fact that, a lot of my friends were big. And then when they stopped playing football, they got bigger and not in a good way, So I just naturally said, you know what? I'm going to try and stay healthy and keep the good fitness tips that came from playing football through college in my life. So I exercise at least 5 times a week. And I've been very disciplined on cardio. My resting heart rate at night is 43, and during the day, it's 52. I do lift weights to try and maintain strength and good bone structure. And I love yoga and stretching. And it's good to stay hydrated. It's good to eat healthy. You just feel better when you're exercising.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is just be a lifelong learner.
Mhm.
I read anything. I try and rotate. I'll read a biography of James Baker, the man that ran Washington during the Reagan and Bush era. I'll follow that up with a fantastic piece of literature, won the National Book Prize in the US last year, Interior Chinatown by Charles Yu. And then I'll read Range by David Epstein.
My former colleague at Sports Illustrated.
Exactly. Fantastic book about being a generalist versus a specialist.
Yeah.
Those are the last three that I've read. And you can say, like, well, what's the point? Keep your mind always growing and hearing new voices and stories and lessons, but do it to solve real and permanent problems every day. It's the fresh perspectives that help you grow. And that's why reading to me is so critically important, Do it purposefully with an open mind, and it will make everything in your life better.
Wow. Well, Jeff Bell, I have to tell you, it's been an honor learning your story, getting a chance to work with you and the team over the last year and creating an opportunity to grow. But today, I have to thank you for being a corporate competitor.
Thank you, Don. We love you, love working with you, and you're doing great work on your podcast here. Thank you so much for having me.
This conversation was so much fun. While playing football, Jeff learned the greatest energy effort is in making the difficult simple. Is there anything in your business that you need to simplify? Because once you have a simple process, it is replicable. If everybody understands it and it's easy to do, that is when you scale. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man?
Great, sir. How are
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.